What's going on, guys? Jim here with Unplayable, and do I have a deck tech for you? That's right, all you Lando Calrissian lovers. You have been waiting for his time in the sun just to shine like the bright superstar that he is. And I made some jank. I'm so sorry, but this deck is so fun. I just put it together, played a couple games with it. Even had one guy just say like, man, this deck is so boring. And then the spice hit and he just didn't know what to do. And so I'm so excited to share this deck with you guys. Hope you enjoy. So first thing real quick, Lando is a brand new leader from set 4. If you watch any sort of tier list videos, most people have him on the very bottom tier. Foolish, let me tell you why. So Lando is a Rebel official pilot leader, and his ability says action for 1 resource. You play a unit from your hand, and if you have 1 ground unit and 1 space unit, at least 1 of each, you can have more, when you play this card, you get to put a shield on a unit. And so this ability is really good for stalling the game. So I'm like, cool, Lando wants to stall. Let's get some ambush in there. Let's get some sentinel in there. We'll put a bunch of shields on our guys, kind of like the Luke ability. The downside is that you have to have a unit in each arena, and so your opponents know what to do against that. However, you can keep shielding the same unit if you want to. So it's not restricted by Luke's ability, where you can only shield the unit the turn that it enters play. So there's a little bit more flexibility that way. And then on the flip turn, he can either come in as a 5/5 pilot, and if you bring him in as a pilot upgrade, you can shield another unit. You can't shield that leader unit, unfortunately. Or he can come into the ground side as just a 5/7 sentinel unit. The downside, though, is he does come in at 7, which is extremely late. So any leaders that are going to come in that late into the game, you really have to stall out well to be able to get to that point. And so as I was looking at this deck, I was trying to think like, okay, I want a stall deck. I want some extra health. So I actually put in Data Vault. I wanted to try a deck with 10 cards just to see what that felt like. And I think some people would look at Data Vault as just an opportunity to play 10 more cards that are kind of similar to what you've already been playing. I saw this as an opportunity to go absolutely crazy with this list. So if you're looking at the deck list as you're watching this video, you're going to see a card in here that makes no sense on the surface. And that's going to be Endless Legions. It's a 14 cost card, double green. But it says when you play this card, you can take any units from your resource pool and play them right then and there. Which sounds crazy. This is a blue-green deck. Typically that card would cost 16 resources. However, there's also a 9-cost space unit in here called the Starhawk. And when I saw the Starhawk, I immediately thought of Endless Legions and I said, I have to make this work because the Starhawk costs 9 resources. It's a 6/9 ship that has ambush on it, but then it says the cost of every card you play is cut in half. And so Endless Legions, which would typically cost 16 resources, now would only cost 8 resources. So gears are spinning, making this happen. So the deck came together and I used those 10 card slots for the Endless Legions package. So if you're looking at the sideboard, that's kind of the cute thing you would do if you weren't playing Endless Legions. And if the deck is just like you're playing a deck that's just too fast, cut the Endless Legions package, put the sideboard in, easy to go. So I just want to go through the deck real quick. I've had a lot of fun playing it already. It actually has pretty good game, just people don't know how to play against Lando yet, so I don't know if the deck is actually really solid in getting those shields down, or just so new and unique that nobody has a clue what they're doing yet. So wanted to go through what's going on here. If you're looking through the list, I have a lot of turn 1 plays. With the extra 60 cards, you actually need more. Typically people will play around 11 or 12 turn 1 plays in a deck. I have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 in this deck. And I think that's actually probably on the low side for what you're willing to do for 60 cards. This deck really does need to have a turn 1 play available. So even the pilots in the list, you could just play on the ground as just a unit to get out there. Ideally, you're going to play like a ground unit turn 1, a space unit turn 2, go off to the races from there with all of the shield shenanigans. Maz is in here as just a personal flavor. I just like Maz as a unit. pairs really well with U-Wing reinforcement, which I'll talk about later. I put it in like every blue-green Luke deck that I used to make in previous sets, and so that's just a personal choice there, but it is really fun when you play Maz down with 2 other units. It comes in as a 3/3, pretty easy to shield with Lando now, and that card can get really big. So you'll actually see a lot of cards in here that can buff pretty consistently to get huge. Other turn 1 plays are just really good stats on units. So you have the Battlefield Marine, you have Hera, which can either be a pilot for Restore 1 or just a 2/3 on the ground Restore 1, pretty solid. Luke Skywalker is one of my favorite pilots in this whole game, especially with Lando. You can start him out as a pilot. If they're able to kill that, you now get a ground unit, so he kind of hedges on both sides there, which is really cool. And then yeah, you also have the new A-Wing, which is the 3/2 space ship, and then of course Restored Arc for the 2/3 in space. You definitely need to ramp in this deck if you're actually going to try to pull off Endless Legions. If you're not going to try that, no big deal. The ramp is kind of some of the stuff that you can typically cut, because once you get to 8 resources, you've kind of maxed out. So we do have Spark of Hopes. We do have some resupplies in here, just to try to get to the flip turn in particular, but also eventually get to Starhawk on 9 and Endless Legions on 10 to pull that off. And then everything kind of in that mid game here is really going to focus on stalling out that board as long as possible. So this deck is really important for you to understand what your opponent's trying to do and counter that play. And so you have the Concord Dawn Interceptors to try to block space, same as Bright Hopes over there. You have Echo Base Defender over on the ground side, Luke Skywalkers, Obi-Wan Kenobis, all the classic Sentinel units. Just try to stall that out. One thing that you're going to kind of struggle with here is the events that will typically do a lot of the killing. Like for their other units, you're going to have to trade a lot with this deck. Fortunately, the shields help you do that very well. But you do have a couple takedowns, you have a couple Fell of the Dragons, and you do have a couple perilous positions as well, just to slow that opponent down, get to the end game, and win that way. And lastly, just a couple kind of cheeky cards in here. There's a lot of Rebel synergy in this. And so one of my favorite cards is actually Fleet Lieutenant, because if you're able to play Fleet Lieutenant for 4 resources, you can actually use the Lando ability to play Fleet Lieutenant, give a shield, and then attack with that unit if you want to. And so it kind of counts as like an additional kill spell, or it gives you some extra reach. There's a lot of rebels in this list, so just having that reach to do an extra 2 damage is also great. But you don't need the buff necessarily. Sometimes it's just coming in, shielding a unit, and that unit attacking is all that you need it to do. So Fleet Lieutenant is actually a pretty good MVP in this deck, even though it's not really an aggressive deck. And then the Sabine's Masterpiece is just a card that, if you see that card, you kind of just need to kill it immediately. It has the Rebel synergy. It's a good stats on that unit. And again, if you can get a shield on this thing and keep it alive for a while, the experience points really stack up, and it basically has Restore 2 on it as well, assuming you have a blue unit out in play. The Wing Leader in here, I'm hit or miss on it. Sometimes the extra experience is great, sometimes just a little bit too slow. That's one that I'm definitely considering cutting. But yeah, from there, really wanted to just talk through the Endless Legions package here. Again, you're trying to play Starhawk on 9, Endless Legions on 10, but just for 8 resources, so you'll typically have about 2 resources left there. But essentially, I just picked a lot of units that I thought were really fun. So started with Cad Bane, just as a unit that can just clear their board. So if they have a lot of units down, Cad Bane can just capture them. It's really great. Luke Skywalkers, you're obviously going to be playing for 7 anyway, but it's just a fantastic unit. The other thing I like about Cad Bane, do want to go back to that, is it does actually work with U-Wing reinforcement. So I was looking at other 7 drops in the game to potentially pair with this too. So Savage Press is another one that I'm considering, just as a one-of copy of. It's just a 7/7 that could potentially come in ready, which is great. But yeah, as far as the rest of the Endless Legions cards, these are always just going to get resourced. So if you draw them, you resource them. Don't think twice about it. So we also have a Crate Dragon, Relentless, the Devastator, as the other cards that, again, if you see them, they're out of aspect. You're not actually trying to play them from your hand unless you just have the resources to do so. They go into your resource pool. Once you pull that Endless Legions, you play it and you win the game that way. For a very funny, like over the top, just you won the game, congratulations. Tech is also a part of the Endless Legions package. I really like having the options to kind of store these cards away. And so playing Tech to then get out the Starhawk if you don't want to keep it in your hand and you actually need the other cards to stall to get you to the late game. That just helps you hedge a little bit that direction. So specifically in mid-range games, tech is fantastic for that. Against hard control, you typically have a little bit more flexibility to hold some of these cards in your hand, specifically the Starhawk and the Endless Legions. So that's the list. I've had a lot of fun playing it so far. Still working on a few of the tweaks just to see what's good, what's not good. So if you have any suggestions or cards that you're just like, hey, this has to go in this deck, I'm all ears. I'm loving Lando. Hope you give it a shot. Because yeah, this set is so fun. And I think there's a lot of flexibility to really tinker with some cool deck ideas that may not seem like meta picks, but they're still great because people don't know what you're trying to do. And sometimes just that element of surprise is exactly what you need. So give this deck a try, let me know your thoughts, and we will see you for the next deck tech. Peace.